Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Africa News. Coming up, lynching and looting continues in Central African Republic with a lawmaker killed in the capital. Our reporters show us how French forces are trying to disarm the militia and boost skeleton staff to local police forces. Former Congolese militia leader Bosco Ntaganda appears before the International Criminal Court in The Hague. This week we'll decide whether or not there is enough evidence to put him on trial. And torrential rains in Burundi wipe away hundreds of homes, leaving at least 60 people dead and scores more injured. A brutal weekend in Bangui as violence continues to rock Central African Republic. Over 10 people were killed this weekend, including a minister in the interim government. Jean-Emmanuel Daruna was gunned down in a drive-by shooting after he called for a return to peace in the country. On Monday, France toughened its tone, accusing the Christian militia, the Anti-Balaka, of being an enemy of peace. Travelling north of the capital, France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent and Sylvain Rousseau are in Bosombele. Like many other towns, it's also been hit by violent intercommunal attacks. Today's task there is reforming the local police force, but as the report shows, it's not going to be easy.
In Bosombele, in the west of the Central African Republic, the marketplace is half empty. Every single Muslim resident has fled in fear of anti-Balaka militias. To help life return to normal, local police are now back on the streets, but they're still very few in number and drastically under-equipped.
It's not enough. It's really not enough. The police are not properly armed. The Seleka forces left with all their weapons.
At present, only 21 police officers have returned to the job, armed with just 8 shared Kalashnikovs. The local security forces went into hiding during the anti-Balaka's lynching and pillages.
We weren't doing anything. It's only when the French forces arrived that we dared to come out and present ourselves. Now we're here, the police in the neighborhood.
French troops are deployed here and are trying to get the local police back in action. Their main job, to help local officials deal with the anti-Balaka militias still at large.
What's the relationship between the anti-Balaka and the police and the population?
Well, there was a moment when we were at a stalemate because they don't want our presence here.
There are still more than 100 anti-Balaka fighters posted around the town. With no real resources, the police chief sees dialogue as the way forward.
We need to approach them, to bring them in, so that they develop a sense of patriotism to rebuild the country.
To help local authorities, the French army is busy disarming the anti-Balaka militias. At this checkpoint, they seized 3 rifles, ammunition and a machete.
We have to make them understand that they are not the police here, so they don't carry out any attacks.
The French army is stepping up its crackdown on the anti-Balaka militias. The head of the French forces in the Central African Republic has declared that they are the main enemies to peace in the country and that they'll be treated as bandits.
Well, briefly, in news coming in from Mali, the International Red Cross says one of its teams has gone missing in the north of the country. The last contact with the team of 5 aid workers hasn't been made. They haven't made contact since last Saturday when their vehicle was travelling between Kidal and Gao. All 5 are Malian citizens, and we will, of course, keep you up to date on them in our next edition. Well known as the Terminator, a former Congolese militia leader, Bosco Ntaganda, is appearing before the International Criminal Court this week. Seen as one of the key players in ethnic crimes that swept Democratic Republic of Congo at the turn of the century, Ntaganda stands accused of 13 counts of war crimes and 5 counts of crimes against humanity, including using child soldiers.
A key week has begun at the International Criminal Court for one of the most important warlords of the Great Lakes region.
My name is Ntaganda. I was born on the 5th of November 1973 in Rwanda, but I grew up in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I am a soldier.
In the Kinya-Rwanda language, Bosco Ntaganda introduced himself as a soldier or member of a regular army. But for ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, he is the Terminator, a rebel chief known to be without mercy. The 5-day hearings will confirm if there is enough evidence against him. She is calling for formal charges and a trial.
The prosecution will present evidence to demonstrate that since at least April of 2002, Bosco Ntaganda and his co-perpetrators conceived a plan to assume the military and political control of Ituri.
In 2002 and 2003, Bosco Ntaganda was the military leader of the FPLC, or Patriotic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, who were very active in the Ituri region. To dominate this mineral-rich region, the militia massacred local people. They also raped child soldiers.
The crimes for which Bosco Ntaganda is charged were neither random nor spontaneous.
In DR Congo, many people hope that the elements of proof produced by the ICC prosecutor will be solid enough to bring a real trial. Most daily newspapers in Kinshasa on Monday ran front-page stories on the Ntaganda hearings. When the hearings end on Friday, judges will have 60 days to decide if the warlord will stand trial.
Well, as you heard there at the end of that last report, this week's hearing will decide if there's enough evidence to press ahead with a trial against Ntaganda. Well, Geraldine Matoli from Human Rights Watch is following that trial, and she gave us an idea of the proof being presented so far.
A couple of interesting facts. Apparently, the Office of the Prosecutor has convinced some insider witnesses, so soldiers who fought under Ntaganda within his armed group, the Union des Patriotes Congolais, to testify for the prosecution. So it will be very interesting to hear what they have to say. The Office of the Prosecutor also has a couple of videos that show Bosco Ntaganda present in the place where the crimes happened. For example, the town of Mongwalu, which was the place where a very serious ethnic massacre took place in 2003, where more than 800 Lendu civilians were massacred. The Office of the Prosecutor also discussed, to some extent, the role of Rwanda and Uganda in arming, financing, supporting the militias in Eastern Congo, including Ntaganda's militia. But it is not clear that there's anything in this case that would concern those countries.
Pulling out of peace talks, the South Sudanese rebels say they will not take part in negotiations with the government unless 4 political prisoners still held in Juba are released and Ugandan troops, who they say have been backing the authorities, withdraw. The second round of talks was aimed at stabilising a fragile ceasefire that was signed between the two sides just last month. Well, torrential rains have washed away hundreds of homes in Burundi and left at least 60 people dead, with scores more injured. Mud homes dissolved and keeled over as landslides came smothering down hillsides, and the death toll is sadly expected to rise.
Most of those who died were children. The torrential rain swept away hundreds of homes and cut off roads and power in Bujumbura. Police said the toll was the highest in living memory from a disaster caused by freak weather. The poorest areas, where the houses are built from mud bricks, were the worst hit.
The water arrived up to my chest. I was with my grandson. I held him because he wanted to look for his mother, who was taken away by the floods. Luckily, she's still alive.
In Kinama, in the north of the city, a stream broke its banks, with waters rising to shoulder level in some places. By midday, the flooding had subsided, leaving scenes of devastation. The Burundian government has promised to provide food aid and to pay for the funerals of the dozens of people who died.
South Africa's left-wing firebrand politician Julius Malema has been declared provisionally insolvent by judges this Monday. The court ruling doesn't solve Malema's tax troubles, but means that for now at least he can still run for office in upcoming elections on May 7th. Malema, who was kicked out of the ruling ANC party back in 2012, stands accused by South African Revenue of failing to submit tax returns for 4 years, or in other words, owing the state some 16 million rand, close to $2 million in unpaid taxes. And we're going to end this edition of Africa News with a bit of music, an extract of Dhafar Youssef's latest album, Birds Requiem. Whether this self-taught oud player from Tunisia has come up with a jazz spiced up with the sounds of world music, or world music splashed with jazz, I'll let you decide. Enjoy, and we'll see you for our next edition in 45 minutes.